Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. Our look at Agatha All Along continues with Episode 7, Death's Hand in Mine, written by Gia King and Cameron Squires, and directed by Jack Schaefer. As always, because I do these unscripted, there is a blanket spoiler warning in place because I may decide to talk about spoilers. If you do not wish to be spoiled, Agatha All Along streams on Disney Plus, and I'm just gonna cut right to the chase. This is the best episode of the show. This is going into the finale. This is gonna be the one to beat. Building up to this episode, we get several questions answered and a couple of big reveals. One in particular I have been skirting around. So let's get that out of the way because it is a major reveal for the remainder of the series, but it doesn't particularly play a big role here. The character of Rio Vidal, played by Aubrey Plaza. Now, in past reviews, I said Funko Pop, in revealing some of their Agatha All Along Funkos, have leaked spoilers pertaining to this series, and I have been dancing around that, waiting for what that leak was to happen in series before talking about it. One was that the teen is Billy Kaplan. And this is the other one. Rio Vidal is death. And again, we've kind of had hints of it in previous episodes. In particular, this is episode 7. 6 was the Wiccan episode 5. When, before Alice died, when they did the seance and the Ouija board said they were talking to death and Rio started laughing. Also, right after that trial, Rio vanished. But in this episode, it is confirmed. Which is kind of exciting because death is one of the more wild aspects of the Marvel Universe. Probably best known for the fact that in Marvel Comics, Death was involved in a love triangle with Thanos and Deadpool. In fact, fun fact, in the comics, that's the reason Deadpool is immortal. Thanos made him immortal so that he could never be with Death. It's wild, it's crazy. But, now knowing who Rio is, knowing who she was from the leaks, that does kind of flavor some of my speculation about where we're going into the finale. For example, Agatha's sort of tense, standoffish attitude toward her, Rio being a combination of vicious and flirty. So my long-standing theory is, and again, last 2 episodes, we'll see what happens, is that Rio does not want to kill Agatha because of some perceived slight against her, although that factors into it. But just knowing what I know about death in the comics, again, Thanos made Deadpool immortal, Rio wants to kill Agatha because it is the only way they can be together. And looking at lines of dialogue, and performance choices from Catherine Hahn and Aubrey Plaza, I imagine that in this particular dynamic, Agatha was the one to end whatever kind of relationship they had. I also speculate that it is tied into Agatha's son, Nicholas Scratch, but we're getting way ahead of ourselves. So the other big thing that happens in this episode, this is our look into Lilia Calderu, the Divination Witch. I think in the past few episodes, I think most of this review series, I've called her the Clairvoyant, which was wrong. She is the Divination Witch. It's said again in this episode, and I think it was only said one other time way back in episode 2. But we finally understand what's been going on with her. As a Divination Witch, as a Clairvoyant, I thought Lilia was seeing the future, and just to make a poorly aged example, because it's a property created by an absolute monster, I thought it was in the vein of Sybil Trelawney. Most of the time she is a hack, she is a fraud, but sometimes she does get these genuine glimpses of what's going to happen, and she just kind of blurts it out, unable to control it. That is not the case. It is actually a very interesting idea, because we catch up with Lilia and Jen, who survived the events of the cliffhanger of episode 5, and she finally tells Jen what's going on. To Lilia, time is an illusion. And when she figured out what was going on, when she realized this, she started experiencing time out of sequence, you know. And this is most exemplified in this episode by her cutting, flashing back to her memories of her first coven. And, you know, some of the lessons imparted to her by her mentor. And every time we flash back to this, it's not Lilia as a child. It is sometimes it is Patti LuPone in that position, in that role. And you know, visually, this episode is very striking. It's really well done. When we get to this particular aesthetic for the trial, I think the costumer was just having a blast because the previous trials were all kind of various decades or aesthetics. Like Jen's trial was this sort of what's it called? Hampton sort of upper class, you know, social elite type of thing. Alice's trial was 70s rock band. The next trial, you could argue it was Agatha's, was sort of 80s horror sleepover vibes. And now we're just going full on fantasy with everyone being various fantastical characters. Agatha is the Wicked Witch of the West. Jen is the evil queen from Snow White disguised as the old crone. Lilia is the Glinda, the Good Witch of the South, and Billy is Maleficent. The costumes in this episode were spectacular, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So anyway, those random moments of Lilia just sort of blurting something out or looking like she's lost, again, they weren't her having these flashes of the future. They were her being misplaced through time. And, you know, if you were trying to keep track, don't worry. This episode replays them all from Lilia's point of view. And on top of that, let's just get into the stand-up. This is Patti LuPone's episode. She is spectacular here. She is amazing. She carries this episode. And this episode would not be as good as it was if it was not her. Her performance sells this. It's already a very strong, well-written episode. Just her performance adds another layer on top of that, especially the ending. Because we've kind of seen throughout this series that Lilia kind of has her own doubts about her magic. She has her own guilt. Like she tells the leader of her former coven, she foresaw all their deaths, but it didn't change anything. And given that, like Agatha, Lilia is centuries old, who knows what she's seen and tried to stop, but couldn't, you know. And it's kind of why she plays up the whole fraud angle with why she's a fortune teller or playing a psychic. She'd rather be a fraud than a real witch. And it's only through her trial that she kind of rediscovers her love for what she's done. Also the fact that, you know, she has seen her own death. Sorry, I'm kind of going all over the place. There's not a lot to say about this episode. It is spectacular. That's all I can say. The Salem 7 do once again catch up with the Coven, and that is where Lilia sacrifices herself. I will say, for those of you who know what the trial room is and how it plays out, before Lilia falls, we only hear 5 splats. I was trying to watch this scene, rewind it, and pause it and try to see, and it was really hard to decipher. So I don't know if this is the case, but I imagine there are still 2 members of the Salem 7 left, and that's probably going to tie in some way into the finale. But also, you know, just after having gone through this traumatic ordeal, living out of time, you know, never really knowing where she is, just the fact that at the end of her life, Lilia faces it with a smile. There's a lot to read into this episode. There's a lot of really deep meanings and themes. I'm not going to go into all that, but yeah, episode 7. It's just fantastic, and it kind of... I imagine this is going to be where the show peaks, so it'll be interesting to see what happens next time in the finale. Patti LuPone gives an absolutely masterful performance. She owns this episode, and I do want to give a shout out to one of the episode's guests. 1 minute, I have it written down. Again, apologies if I butcher the names. Laura Boccialetti, who plays the leader of Lilia's old coven. It's a really understated performance, a very matronly, very motherly, very comforting in the face of just this awful ordeal. But yeah, this is, at the moment, probably my favorite episode of the series. But those are just my thoughts. Agatha All Along, episode 7. Have you seen it yet? What are yours? Start a conversation in the comments below. And remember to like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload. And in the description box below, you'll find a link to my socials where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and I'll see you guys next time for the finale.